successful in online business and becoming a top 1% sales rep almost seemed impossible when I first started. But after generating over $25 million of sales within the last 2.5, 3 years and teaching other entrepreneurs to do the same, I've cracked the code, right? The biggest mistake I see sales reps and people getting into online business and remote sales is they try and sell somebody rather than allowing that person to sell themselves. That's why I created a completely different system. And today I'm going to basically break down that exact framework I use to not only scale myself to 40K plus a month, but also implement to other sales processes for the teams I manage and students I actually train. What the sales methodology is, it's called the SICC sales methodology. So there's a few different breakdowns within this. I know this looks super complicated, but I broke it down this way because it's actually very simplistic. So with this, SICC stands for status, it stands for identity, certainty, as well as commitment. Those are like the 4 different pillars as far as the methodology as a whole, which we'll obviously break down. Now, it's very simplistic, and too many people getting into sales or teaching sales, oh, you need to focus on objection handling, you need to focus on discovery, your pitch. Yes, those things help, but this breaks down the identity and status drivers as well as incorporates the psychology and mindset side of things as far as why people buy, why people make decisions, and the state of psychology you need to get that person in order to actually continue moving forward. So as far as status, right, 2 things. Current circumstance. So when you identify as the status, and I can use fitness as an example, right? If you're selling fitness coaching, you're not selling the coaching program itself. You're selling the status and identity of that person. So an example, status, current circumstance. They're 300 pounds, their body fat's 25%. They're experiencing like back pain, different injuries throughout as well. So that's the current status of the person. And keep in mind, this works for business opportunities. This works for B2C, B2B, fitness offers, basically anything. You just have to tailor to that specific approach. So their current circumstance, right? As well as how long this has actually been going on for, right? 2, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. So you want to expand the gap as far as how long this problem has actually been going on, because the whole reason we're getting the status initially is to identify that current state of that person. Right? That's the whole goal of it. They're, where they don't want to be, which then we're going to obviously find the opportunity cost where that person needs to go. So their current circumstance, how long that's actually been going on for, gives them their current status, right? And throughout that, you can also dig the emotion out of the person. That's what we are as a human, but how has that affected our relationships? How has that affected, our family? When we do business or networking, connections, like anything, when you show up to the gym, right? People perceive you in different ways. So what's the current status? Not only other people, but ourselves are also perceiving ourselves as. So with this too, it's super important as far as identity, right? So the emotional triggers, just what we mentioned, status leads right into identity. So with the emotional triggers, is that self-confidence? Is that self-doubt? Is that, we're being perceived by others, we don't want to go out in public? Like, what's the identity our status is actually creating, and what are those emotional triggers we need to focus on in order to actually make a change, right? So status, identity. With identity, you're basically building them up to that ideal state, like shifting their perspective, which will lead projective closing, which I'll get into at the end. However, with the identity, that person has a 6-pack. They're 12% body fat. They're, able to go to the gym every day. They no longer experience back pain. All those things, that's their new identity. That's the new shift they're trying to create for themselves in order to go from where they are now to where they want to go. Right? All we have to do throughout that is figure the emotional triggers, how long this has actually been going on for, and what we need to do to put it to an end, right? So you have their status as well as identity. 2 super important parts in order for somebody to actually make change. Now, within the future, with the version themselves they're at now, with who their new identity is, all we have to do is build up their certainty as well as commitment, right? So certainty is trust in you and trust in themselves. Being the sales rep, they need to trust you that you're the expert. You're the leader, as sales is leadership, guiding that person in the right direction, making that positive reinforced change. So they trust you as well as they trust themselves. Like, hey, I know I can do this. I have the self-confidence. I have the certainty. All I have to do is get resourceful and do everything in my power to actually make it work. That's what certainty is at the end of the day. There's no little doubts. Yes, there might be a few, but nothing that we can't actually overcome and provide ourselves and instill in ourselves. There's enough certainty to actually make change. The second half of this is the trust in the process as well as the solution. So the process itself is the fulfillment, right? If you're offering, a training plan, a diet routine, a mindset shift, a daily structure, one-on-one coaching, all those things as far as the process, do they feel what you're offering, right, has enough substance and enough value, it's going to get them to the results they want, which is the solution, right? What you offer, going back to the identity as well as the status, where they are now, does your process and does your solution, is that going to be able to take them from where they are now to where they want to get to? That's the whole breakdown of the solution. If you have those four things as far as certainty, trust in themselves, trust in you, trust in the process, as well as trust in the solution, that person is going to move forward because they view you as the leader. They have enough certainty in order to actually make change. Now, the last thing, if you've seen some of my sales calls before, I probably mentioned commitment 15 or 20 times throughout a call because you can handle the limiting belief, but if there's no commitment, it defeats the purpose. So one of which is urgency. Like building enough pain, building enough urgency for that person to actually make a change. Because if they're comfortable, if they're stagnant, there's no reason for them to even be on the call because the program defeats itself at the point, right? But with the urgency side of things, you're getting that throughout the status and the identity. Their emotional triggers, where they are now, where they want to get to, why they haven't yet gotten there. So when you get to the commitment side of things and you ask the question like, why now do you feel we're finally ready to push past that limiting belief, make the full-on commitment we need to get back to this ideal state we're ultimately looking to get to. So creating urgency, creating pain out of that person, using emotional triggers as well as their ideal state, as well as taking ownership of results. We can have the best program, the best mentorship, the best coaching in the world. However, you're the one responsible for getting those results. Are you going to show up every single day? Are you going to attend all the calls? Are you going to go to the gym 6 days a week? Are you going to eat healthy and not cheat yourself? So flipping that responsibility back onto them as far as taking ownership, doing everything in their power, making the full-on commitment, and becoming the guarantee at the end of the day. So all in all, the SICC sales methodology is very simplistic. It breaks down status, identity, certainty, and commitment. And the important thing I want you guys to understand with this is 5% of it is actually the product, right? You're not selling that person. The person's selling themselves by identifying and acknowledging they're not in the position they want to get to. This is their North Star, where they ideally want to get to. All we have to do is figure out in between, provide them enough certainty, provide them enough commitment in order to actually make that change. So that's the sales methodology. As far as the type of closer and type of person you want to be, that's projective closing, right? So all of this is an umbrella. The SICC sales methodology is the overarching, kind of sales blueprint, that exact strategy and things you need to become successful. But by doing this, you're becoming a projective closer. And what I mean by that is you have their status and you have your identity. The only two things you're basically essentially doing is costing them the inaction, right? That's more harmful, as well as projecting where they want to get to. It's the opportunity cost. So throughout this, you're asking questions and projecting their status and identity. If we do nothing, what's ultimately ever going to change? Nothing. If we let the last 2 years look like the next 2 years, 5 years into the future, where is that going to leave us? So you're consequencing and projecting the future as far as if they do nothing, nothing's going to change. Keeping them in that same cycle, never reaching that identity they want to get to, but then you're also projecting the future. When we do have the six pack, when we are able to, make connections, get the girl we want, all those things, like what does life look like at that point, right? So you're projecting their ideal state, you're projecting what they actually achieve and what they look like when they're at that ideal version of themselves. So that's the whole basis behind like projective closing is you're projecting on if they do nothing, making them realize it's more harmful as far as the inaction to be within the same position, as well as you're projecting the future as far as when they do take that first step, they make that commitment for themselves. What does life actually look like at that point? What do you feel actually changes? So that's the whole basis that took me from 0 to 40K plus a month in commissions within my first 6 months closing is literally using this exact breakdown, this exact framework. All the questions you're asking, the program regardless, The questions you ask are based around their status, like their long term goal, where they're at now, their identity, why we haven't actually gotten there yet, what the future version of ourselves looks like. And throughout that, all you have to do is provide enough certainty and gain enough commitment for that person to actually make a change. And that's by doing that, being a projective closer, right? So I hopefully this all makes sense, but this is the exact blueprint I use to literally scale to where I am now, whether it's closing myself, whether it's running my own program, whether it's sales managing and training other reps on the same exact strategy. But this is the most successful blueprint. You don't need fancy reframes. You don't need fancy analogies. Literally keep it as simplistic as possible, which is why it works. It's reverse psychology. You would think you need to be fancy, use all these fancy vocabulary words, all these technicals, but you don't. Like, keep it as simplistic as possible and just understand, okay, every single call, I need the status from that person and the identity, right? Throughout that, I have to provide enough certainty and enough commitment out of that person, all while projecting their cost of inaction versus projecting where they want to go. So throughout the model, that's just the overarching is the methodology. But within that, you're basically being a projective closer to get those answers and identify their status and identity, as well as providing them certainty while gaining commitment. So hopefully this helps. I'm not sure if you guys have tuned into any of my YouTube videos prior, but if not, like, subscribe, shoot a comment, Connor_Krinos on all socials. If you have questions, you want a little bit more in-depth of a breakdown on this, more than happy to answer those, provide some more context as far as the blueprint I used. Otherwise, if you're in high ticket sales, you're looking to get started in remote sales, online business, or you're in another sales industry and want to use this exact module, this exact training, or scale your income to, the 5, 10, 20K months as far as the remote side of things as well, I linked my application to direct one-on-one coaching and placement within my bio. It's also in my Instagram bio if you guys have any questions and want to hit me there. But hopefully this helps. Hopefully you're able to start implementing this on your high ticket calls or other sales industries to close more deals, gain more commission. As far as like everything I covered, as I mentioned, this is the exact blueprint that allowed me to close $25 million of sales within 2.5 to 3 years. Hopefully this helps, and we will see you guys soon.